In this video, I want to share some of my thoughts around contracts and whether or not you should be using them in your photography business. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If it's your first time here, my name is Matthew. I am an architecture and design photographer based in Kansas City. So before we dive into the subject of contracts, I wanted to run an idea by my subscribers or possibly the first time viewers if you're new to the channel. A lot of questions and messages that I get aren't necessarily related to the process or how I take photos. There are some, more often than not, a lot of them are business related. Now, Mike Kelly and I did put out a tutorial series recently solely about the business side of running an architecture photography business. Clearly, we don't cover every single scenario and situation that us as architecture photographers run into, but we do cover a lot of the basics. So the idea I had was to possibly do a weekly video on this channel solely addressing the questions that you all have around the business of architecture photography. So if you want to be one of my guinea pigs and have a question that you'd like me to address in an upcoming video, let me know. Drop it down in the comments, but start off with the term business question, and I'll see what I can do to help you out. Okay, contracts. So I wouldn't necessarily call it a trend, but something that I've noticed recently is professional photographers advocating for not using contracts. Now, I don't think there's a ton of photographers out there doing this, but I've seen comments in forums, Facebook groups, blogs, and YouTube videos suggesting that you, as a professional photographer, should not be using contracts. What? Are you serious? I won't beat around the bush. Of all the advice, tips, and tricks related to professional photography that's floating around on the interwebs, this has to be one of the most foolish, naive, and ludicrous bits of advice I've ever heard. Think about this for a moment. A person who calls themselves a professional is advising other photographers to run their business without putting things in writing. Or at the very least, some photographers say,
I don't get it. What's the big deal? Why do you even need to put things in writing to begin with?
Let's put it into context. You run a photography business and want to be viewed as a professional, right? Okay, great. If you hire a well-established remodeling company to do work on your kitchen, you're going to sign a contract. You rent an apartment, you're going to sign a contract. If you purchase a car at a dealership, you're going to sign a contract. Even if you take that same car back to the same dealership to just simply get the oil change, there's probably going to be something in writing that you have to agree to in order for that vehicle to get serviced. Even when you download an app on your phone, most require that you check a box stating that you agree to the developer's terms and conditions. That's a contract. You know who doesn't use a contract? That high school kid who mows my lawn every week. Now, I could go on and on with examples, but it boils down to this. Well-established, seasoned businesses and individuals use contracts. And from my perspective, there's two main reasons why photographers don't use contracts. The first is ignorance. They just don't get it. These are the photographers who question why you even need a contract in the first place. Second, which is, in my opinion, I think the biggest reason, is it's inconvenient. It's either too inconvenient for them to work up a contract for every job, or they think they're going to be an inconvenience to their clients. They think they're going to potentially turn off or lose potential clients by asking them to use a contract. And I'll say this, if your clients and potential clients are turned off by implementing a contract or terms and conditions, that should make your spidey sense go off. That is a huge red flag. So let's do a breakdown. Why use a contract in the first place? It's a protection for you, your business, and your clients. Now, I'm no lawyer, so I'm not going to go into a bunch of legalities, but putting things in writing lays out clearly what services and products you will provide to your clients, what the payment terms are, and what they can do with those products, i.e. your photos. Now, I understand if you're fairly new to being a professional photographer, your naive side will say,
Well, I have conversations about all that stuff with my clients, so everyone's on the same page. I really don't need to put anything in writing.
well, that's true. You probably don't need a contract then. until you run into your first scenario where you wish you would have had one. You work as a photographer long enough, it's going to happen. I 100% guarantee that. And if you don't believe that, I would love to come visit you in your country of fairy tale land with unicorns, gumdrop fields, and lollipop trees. Something is eventually going to go sideways in your business. A client will cancel a job at the last minute. They'll ghost you on payment. Your photos will start being used and appearing in places you never intended. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. And if you fear any kind of confrontation that would make you uncomfortable and you'd feel better just rolling over and letting these things slide, well, I get it, but what are you doing attempting to be a professional? If you are 100% okay with being taken advantage of, you cannot complain about the long-term effects it's going to have on your reputation, your brand, and ultimately your income. If your client isn't clear on something or they made an incorrect assumption about something, you're going to be very happy that you have a document that they signed laying things out that you can refer them back to. And if push comes to shove and you eventually have to get a third party or an attorney involved, you are going to be in a pretty solid position if you have things in writing. Okay, so let's talk about the inconvenience of using contracts. I liken contracts to car insurance. Purchasing and having car insurance is not fun. In fact, going through the process of getting car insurance and paying for it is kind of inconvenient. Yes, it's one of those things you might view as cumbersome, but if the day comes where you get in a wreck and damage or injury is done to another party or you're going to be extremely glad you had it. In light of that, if you read a Facebook comment where someone said,
Well, I don't think you need car insurance. I've been driving my car for years without it and have never had an issue.
that person is going to come off like a moron. And yet, there's other so-called professional photographers saying,
I don't think you need to use contracts. I've been running my photography business for years without contracts and have never really had an issue.
that person comes off like well, you get the point. Listen, putting things clear and in writing is not only a protection for all the parties involved, it's part of your brand. You come off as more of a credible professional as opposed to the other yahoos who don't. And if you're shooting so much that you personally find contracts inconvenient to work up for every single shoot, my gut tells me you don't have a contract problem, you have a pricing problem. I see this a lot with individual real estate photographers. They can't justify working up a contract for every single shoot because they're doing 4 or 5 properties a day. The problem isn't contracts. The problem is they've priced themselves too low. If you have to photograph that many real estate listings in a day in order to stay afloat, you may need to reevaluate your pricing structure. That's like someone complaining that car insurance is too expensive when they have multiple DUIs on their record. Clearly, the main issue isn't the car insurance. And if you still view contracts as inconvenient, there's plenty of systems, forms, and templates out there to help make things quick, simple, and easy. Just do a little research. There's a ton out there to help. Now, if you were looking for me to sell you something in this video or provide you with a one-size-fits-all solution, I'm sorry to disappoint. Don't get me wrong, I probably will try to sell you something in the future. Actually, hey, the tutorial series that Mike Kelly and I put together a long time ago, hey, buy one of those. No, this video is more of an opinion piece. My goal is to help you cut through some of the uneducated noise that's out there. Granted, I wasn't shouting it from the rooftops, but very early in my photography career, I was that guy telling myself, I don't need contracts. And I was right until I ran into a situation where I needed one. So whether it's a full-fledged contract that can be signed physically or digitally, or it's simply just terms and conditions listed on your invoices, or maybe a simple box that's checked when a client books you for a shoot, be a professional and get things down in writing. You'll be glad you did.